In this video, we're going to make this cute ice cream design. Let's get started. As I create this design, I'll be sampling these colors right up here. If you'd like to use the same colors as me, I've left a link in the video description to this swatch. Okay, to start, I'm going to make our first scoop of ice cream. I'm going to use the ellipse tool to do this. So first, I'm just going to click and drag out a flattened circle like this. And then I'm going to begin adding circles to it. I think I'm going to turn off snapping though, just so I can freely add these circles without it snapping to our shape. So to add these circles, I'm just going to start adding circles like this at the bottom of this ice cream, just to give it a little bit more shape. And then we're going to use these circles to create drips for the cone. So I'm going to go ahead and grab the move tool. And once I have about 5 circles here, I'm just going to start to move them around. I think I'll make this one a little bit longer, like it's dripping. I can even adjust the rotation if I want to. Alright, and I think that looks pretty good. Once we have these all done, I'm going to select all of these layers. To do that, make sure you have your first layer selected, then hold Shift and select your bottom layer. Now I'm just going to add all of these layers together using the add operation. So now they're all just one shape. I'll go ahead and add a color to it. Let's start by grabbing the color picker and selecting this brown color. I'm going to apply this brown color to the fill. And then going over to the stroke, I'm just going to remove the stroke for now. We'll come back to that later. Now that I've combined all of this into one shape, I'm going to adjust the nodes to customize this even more. So I'm going to grab the node tool right over here. And then I can adjust all of these points to make them look more like an ice cream cone that's dripping down. The reason I have access to all of these different nodes is because I added this shape together using the Boolean operations right up here. Normally you wouldn't get to see all of these nodes. So to start, I'm going to click on this sharp node right here, and I'm just going to drag this handle down. I'll also bring this node out a little bit, and bring this one up. You can see I'm creating more of a dip down like this, where before it was a sharper corner like this. I'll do the same thing for the other side here. It looks like we have an extra node. I'm just going to select that and then press delete on my keyboard. And then I'm going to take this one, and I'm going to rotate that handle around so it looks more like a smooth transition. Alright, I think that looks pretty good. Next, I'm just going to go through all of these other nodes, and I'm going to make them look more like drippy ice cream, so I'll just drag this one down. I think I'll bring this one over like this. Feel free to adjust any of these handles to adjust how all of the lines are curving. You can also drag the handles out to make the lines smoother. Just experiment a little bit and see what looks good for your ice cream. Moving them all in, making them all a little bit smoother. I think this looks pretty good, but this point still looks pretty sharp to me. For some reason I don't have access to the other handle, only this one, which is a little strange. So instead, I'm just going to select this node, and I'm going to go up here and I'll convert it into a smooth node. Now we have access to both handles, and it's even more smooth looking. That's perfect. Okay, with that, I think the shape looks really good. So next, I'm just going to make another scoop of ice cream, and I'll do that by grabbing the move tool. And then I'm going to duplicate this by holding down Command or Control on my keyboard, and then clicking and dragging. With this other scoop, I'm just going to sample the pink color using the color picker. I'll apply that. And then I'm going to flip this scoop horizontally by using this option right up here. Alright, now I'm going to tuck this layer underneath my brown layer, just so that it's not showing up on top of it. And now I can go in with the node tool and adjust these nodes so that this ice cream scoop doesn't look quite so repetitive. I think I'll bring this big drip in just a little bit more. And maybe for this one, I'll bring this in a little bit more. I just don't want them to look like they're perfect duplicate copies, even though they are. So just moving these around a little bit. Okay, I think that looks really good. So let's do this one more time. I'm going to grab the move tool. I think I'll adjust how this is positioned actually, bringing it down a little bit. And then I'm going to duplicate it by holding Command or Control and clicking and dragging once again. For this scoop, I don't think I'm going to flip it. I'm just going to grab the color picker and change the color to this light beige color for our vanilla scoop. And then I'm going to drag this layer to the bottom. That way it's just underneath both scoops. And then I'll grab the node tool and adjust some of these nodes as well. I think I'll bring this one out a little bit more so it looks like it's dripping in this direction. Maybe I'll bring that one up so you can't see it quite as much. This is starting to look pretty repetitive with this scoop. I think I need to move all of these nodes up more. That way it's not a perfect copy. And maybe I'll change their angle a little bit as well. Maybe it's dripping more in this other direction. I think I want this node to be a sharp node so that it changes directions quicker. So with that node selected, I'm just going to convert it to a sharp node. And actually now we lost the little handles on the sides. That was the wrong move. Let me just go back and make that a smooth node. And instead, I'm going to break this curve by holding Alt or Option on my keyboard, and then I'll just break it like this, so now we have access to both of those handles. Okay. After messing with that quite a bit, I don't think those look like duplicate copies anymore, which is great. So I think we're actually done now making our ice cream scoops. Now that the ice cream shapes are finished, it's time to make the cone underneath them. I'm just going to select all of our ice cream shapes. I'll grab the Move tool, and we'll make all of these shapes smaller while holding down Shift just to keep their original shapes intact. And I'll just place that just like that. Now we have room down here for an ice cream cone, so I'm just going to go over to our shapes. I'll open the shapes using this little triangle here. And then I'm going to grab the triangle tool so that we can click and drag out an ice cream cone. I'm just going to rotate it around and make it a little bit at an angle like this. And then I'll place it underneath our ice cream. I'm going to sample this last color on our color swatch here and I'll apply that. And then I'll drag the cone underneath all of the layers. Now we can reposition this however we'd like. I think I want some of the drips going over the sides, so I think I'll leave it about like this. Now that we have the ice cream and the cone, one little final detail I want to add is the cherry on top. I'm going to grab the ellipse tool, and then while holding Shift, I'll click and drag to make a perfect circle for our cherry. I'll raise this layer to the top of everything, and I don't have a color in my swatch for this. Go ahead and choose any color of red that you think looks good for a cherry. There we go. And then we can go ahead and adjust where this is positioned. I'd like it overlapping right here. I think that looks pretty nice. To make this look more like a cherry, I just want to add a little stem to it. And for this, I'm going to pull out the pen tool, but don't be intimidated, we're just going to draw one little line. Go ahead and click and drag somewhere in the top left area. Click and drag in this direction, and then click and drag once more over here to make a little cherry stem. To make this more visible, I'm going to go over to our stroke panel, and I'll increase the width. I think I'd like it to be raised to about there. That looks pretty good. Then I'm going to change the color of the stroke. I'm going to sample the brown color and apply it, and then I'm going to make it slightly darker by clicking and dragging on this and just bringing it in. I want it to be a nice dark brown. I think that stroke and that dark brown color looks really good, and I'd like to add it to all of our other shapes. So I'm just going to select all of the other shapes by selecting the first layer, holding Shift, and selecting the last one. And then I'm going to add this dark brown color. I'll just sample it, and I'll add it to the stroke of all of these shapes. You can't see their stroke right now, so I'll go back over to the stroke panel and I'll just increase it the same amount as I did that cherry stem, which was about 4. There we go. Alright, this looks really nice. To add a little bit more detail to the ice cream, I just want to give them all faces to give them a bit more personality. So to start, I'll grab the ellipse tool, and I'm just going to click and drag out a little eye right here. I want this eye to be the dark brown color. I'm actually going to switch these colors like this, and then I'll remove the stroke. So you should be left with a dark brown fill and no stroke. I'll just zoom in here and make this eye at a little bit more of an angle. Then I'll grab the Move tool, and while holding Command or Control, I'll duplicate this eye to this side, and I'll bring it at an angle once again. That looks like a sweet little face. Okay, let's do this again. I'm going to hold down Command or Control, and I'll click and drag it right over here. This scoop will be looking in the other direction. I'll hold Command or Control once again to duplicate it, and I'll adjust the angle. I want this top scoop to be sleeping, so I'm going to skip doing the circle eyes, and instead I'm going to pull out the pen tool. To make these sleeping eyes, I'm just going to click and drag downward, and then I'll click and drag again upward. Then I'm going to select the stroke and apply this dark brown color. It should still have the same stroke settings, so you can go into the stroke panel and adjust these if you'd like, but I think I like the width to be the same as all of the other strokes. Okay, with that done, I'm just going to press Escape to end my line, and then I'll do this one more time, clicking and dragging downward, and then clicking and dragging upward. I made this one a little bit too large, so I'm just going to grab the node tool, and I'll drag one of the nodes inward to adjust that. Perfect, we have our little sleepy scoop up here. I think I'll grab the ellipse tool and just add a little mouth off to the side. Just like that, while holding Shift. There we go. And then I want to give these other two faces mouths, and I'll do that with the pen tool. I'll grab that, and this one I want to make happy, so I'll click and drag downward like this at an angle, and then I'll click and drag upward at the opposite angle, and then I'll press Escape to end my line. And this one, I think this one's just going to be a little bit more neutral looking. I'll click and drag, and then I'll end my line and press Escape. Alright, we have all of our cute little ice cream faces. Feel free to grab the node tool and adjust how any of these are positioned. I think I'll just make this a little more in. Bring this one in a little bit more. And this mouth looks a little bit too large. I'm going to remove the stroke line. There we go. Okay, our ice cream cone looks adorable, but our layers are getting way out of hand over here, so I'd like to organize these better. I'll start by selecting the cherry layer. I'll hold Shift and select its stem, and then I'll group them together with Command or Control G. Alright, next I'm going to find the faces for all of our scoops so that I can group them together. So these first two layers, I'll hold Shift to select them both. I'll bring them down here. And then I'll find its smile. There it is, and I'll drag this down here. Alright, perfect. I'm just going to select all of these layers and I'll group them together with Command or Control G. And I'm just going to quickly repeat this for the pink scoop and the brown scoop. Grouping these layers together just keeps our layers more organized, but it's also going to help us with our next step, which is adding shading. To add shading, I'm actually going to use the scoops that we have here, and I'm going to duplicate them to create the same shaped shadow underneath them. To start, I'm going to select our brown scoop, then I'm going to duplicate it with Command or Control J. With that duplicated, I'm just going to select the bottom layer, and then using the Move tool, I'm just going to lower this using my arrow keys and Shift on my keyboard. So I'm holding Shift and then the down arrow, and I'll just bump that down a couple of times like that. Then I'm just going to go into this group. I'll select the scoop, and I'm going to make the fill color the same dark brown as the stroke. So you can see now that layer is completely dark brown. And then I'm just going to select the whole group, not that one, this one, and I'm going to lower the opacity of it to make it blend with the layers beneath it. I think I'll lower it to about there. Just a subtle shadow underneath it. I'm going to repeat this process with these two lower scoops. I'll select them both by holding Shift to select them. Then I'll press Command or Control J to duplicate them. I'm just going to drag both of them underneath these scoops. So we have our two duplicates and our two originals. Using these duplicate copies, I'm going to go ahead and make them both a dark brown fill color. So with the fill selected, I'll just click there. And then using the Move tool, I'm just going to lower this down. Alright, so I lowered it about the same amount as the last one. There we go. And then I'm going to lower their opacity the same amount. So I believe it was 20% for the last one. Let me just double check that. Yep, that one was 20%, and so were these two, 20%. Now, this looks like a good amount of bringing down the opacity, but you can see that these two layers overlap in a strange way right here, which is really enhancing that shadow in that area, and I don't want that. To fix this, it's actually pretty easy. I'm just going to open up both of these groups, and I'll select all of the layers inside, and I'll do that by holding down Command or Control and clicking on each individual layer. Once those are all selected, you can go up to the top and add them together like this. Now you can see they're all one shape, which means that we don't have that strange overlap anymore. We also have this group that means nothing in our layers. Just because of all the operations we did, I'll just delete that. Okay, to finish, I just want to add a little bit more detail to our cone. I'm actually going to duplicate this triangle with Command or Control J. Then I'm just going to rotate it, and I'll bring it over here, trying to line up these bottom 2 points. Maybe a little bit more. Line them up like that. Then I'm going to go over here and I'll remove the stroke. I'll select the fill, and I'll just make this a slightly darker color than the original. Then I'm going to make this a child layer to our triangle like that. So you can see we've added a little bit of a shadow there. Feel free to adjust the angle a little bit more. I think I'd like mine to look a little bit less angled. There we go. And as one last step, I just noticed that the ice cream scoop shadow is going outside of the ice cream cone. I only want this to be locked into where the cone is, so I'm going to select this shadow and I'll make it a child layer of the cone as well. Just make sure that this shadow layer is on top of this triangle. If it's not, you'll lose the shadow on that side. So gotta make sure that's in the right order there. But now I believe we're done with our design. Great work, everyone! This ice cream design turned out so cute. If you liked this project and you want to learn even more about Affinity Designer, you can check out my Affinity Designer course in the video description. In the course, we learn about so many great tools and skills, and then we practice everything we learn by doing a bunch of fun projects together. Alright, with that, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next Affinity Revolution tutorial.